It's tough to put into one video exactly how I feel about Death Stranding, but hey, let's give it a go. Death Stranding absolutely deserves its place among the Game of the Year contenders, if only because it's the only one to try something truly original and unique. However, in the immortal words of my little green friend, no, not that one.
Do or do not. There is no try.
The latest video game from the mind behind Metal Gear exceeds expectations in a number of areas, but cataclysmically loses balance and smashes all of its cargo in others. Depending on who you ask, Hideo Kojima is either a genius auteur akin to filmmakers like Tarantino, Kubrick, or Scorsese, or he's a pretentious hack who should just make movies instead of video games. Death Stranding, much like Metal Gear, constantly and simultaneously captures both of these conflicting identities. The best example of this is perhaps in the game's story. It is one that is full of curveball character revelations and gut-wrenching narrative beats on par with the best stories in the biz, but at the same time, the writing in the script is as often vomit-inducing as it is tear-jerking. To very quickly set the scene for those who don't know, the worlds of the living and the dead have smashed together as a result of an event known as the Death Stranding. This caused creatures known as BTs, which are essentially ghosts, to appear in the human world, leaving the human race scattered and disconnected. Your job as Norman Reed, Sam Porter Bridges, is to travel across the hellscape that the US has become to reconnect humanity and bring people together again. As is Kojima's MO, this game has a lot of cutscenes. And this is where much of the story unfolds. Many of these moments are poignant and thought-provoking, but just as many sound like they're the imagination of a child on the school playground. And while the latter certainly has charm to it at times, some of the stuff these characters come out with is just nonsense. The game fails to deliver its story to its fullest potential due to the horrendous pacing. The average playtime seems to vary from around 40 hours upwards. Personally, after sinking 80 hours into the game's main quest and numerous side quests, I can confidently say it's too long. The first 3 chapters, or episodes as the game calls them, can cover 20 to 25 hours of your overall playtime, and there are 14 chapters in total. Luckily for the player's sanity, things really pick up around chapter 6 or 7, as the game funnels you from point to point much more directly. The poor pacing isn't helped by the fact that this is probably Kojima's most convoluted game yet, as he throws terminology and metaphors at you left, right and centre. The game will over-explain the tiniest acute details while glossing over the most complex and multi-layered stuff. I get that this guy's mask is a metaphor. I probably got it before you gave me the 20-minute cutscene explaining it, but just tell me why he's wearing it in relation to lore or the actual narrative. The guy I'm talking about is the absurdly named Die Hardman, played by Tommy Earl Jones. For the most part, you only communicate with him through holographic messages and codec calls, but eventually he does get his time to shine, and oh my god does he. This is generally the way things go for most of the cast. They are fairly one-dimensional until they have one huge exposition dump scene with an awesome performance that actually makes them relevant. Tommy Earl Jones gives one of the most inspired video game motion capture performances ever seen in the medium. Every emotion from nuanced lip quivers to streaming teardrops is captured and is staggering to watch. That is the only time you will hear me use the word nuanced associated with Death Stranding. Norman Reedus himself actually gives one of the weaker performances in the game, rarely giving the player more than a dry grumble. His position in the best performer category at this year's Game Awards is a huge disservice to the other stellar performances from the rest of the cast, such as Lea Seydoux' Fragile and Margaret Qualley's Mama. Someone who is likely to be familiar to most gamers is Troy Baker, who plays the villainous Higgs. Everyone who knows Baker's past work will know he is arguably the best in the whole industry at what he does, but in Death Stranding he's given little to no room to really flex his talents. His most interesting character moments are when Kojima uses him as a meta-commentary on the role of boss fights and bad guys in video games, with more than a wink and a nudge to the audience. Moving on from story to discuss the actual gameplay, crossing the frankly stunning open world is where this game will really lose a lot of people. Kojima has notably said once you go open world,
you're gonna need a wheelchair.
No wait, hold on, that's not it. Once you go open world, you never go back. Despite this being his second attempt, he doesn't seem to fully grasp how to best use your open world in tandem with the story driving the player in a particular direction. Designed in a similar vein to survival games, Death Stranding is deliberately obstructive in a number of areas, forcing you to manage your inventory, balance, footwear condition, among numerous other things. Personally, I really enjoy survival games which require thought in filling your inventory with the correct items and making sure you're ready for any situation, but for many this will just feel as convoluted as the story and just busy work faff. You are, however, constantly given new tools or weapons to make your journey easier, and this progression is always rewarding. It encourages you to do extra deliveries as side quests because you'll probably unlock something new or a better version of what you already have. Death Stranding is not a combat-focused game, though there is combat in it, and it's not the best. The player will encounter BTs, who can be fought with weapons using your own bodily fluids, or they can be avoided entirely using simple stealth mechanics, like crouching and holding your breath. If they catch you, Sam will be swept away to fight a big Lovecraftian tentacle monster, so if you weren't sure that this game has Japanese influences, you certainly are now. These battles often end up more like a repetitive hurdle to overcome rather than a compelling and challenging experience. There are also human enemies called mules, who are obsessed with taking your stuff. That's it. That's their sole motivation. These enemies don't do anything for the story, and they're not that fun to engage, meaning their purpose feels wasted and their absence would not be mourned. Despite frustrating controls and an illogically obtuse UI, I personally found the gameplay loop of collecting packages, equipping the right tools or weapons, manually plotting a route, avoiding tough terrain or timefall, and finally making the delivery to be a strangely compelling and rewarding one. If you saw some of the trailers and thought this game looked like Amazon Delivery, the game, you'd be right. That is the game inside Death Stranding, but the concept is much more impactful. Many people argue that Death Stranding should just be a movie or a TV series instead of a game, but that would fundamentally invalidate the purpose of this game as an artistic expression. Narratively, it would work perfectly as a limited series on something like Netflix in terms of pure entertainment and story. However, the fact that it is a game, an interactive product, is essential for what he's trying to do. Again, do or do not, there is no try, it's up to your own opinion if it succeeds or fails. The game is about connection and bringing people together, and that theme informs the gameplay. You can share materials, resources, and constructions with other players in the game's asynchronous multiplayer. Those systems run parallel with the narrative, and they both complement each other perfectly. That certainly may not be something everyone enjoys, or is even good, but saying it should be a movie is reductive and undermines the principles behind it and why video games exist. As a community of gamers, we want to be taken seriously, and Death Stranding is helping to do that. Oh wait, no, that's until you're slapped in the face with product placement that undermines the entire artistic message.
I will not bow to any sponsor.
If the likes of EA or Activision did this, they would be crucified. Most of society was wiped out by Death Stranding. The world looks like deserted Scottish Highlands or the surface of Mars, but somehow Monster energy drink has survived. And how about we watch Ride Along with Norman Reedus, the actor playing the character you're playing as in a world without a single TV. The latter is very much in line with Kojima's sense of humor, but it's still just ridiculous and totally immersion breaking. Fortunately, you only see it when Sam takes a dump. Yes, that's something you can do in Death Stranding, along with peeing and showering. These three sanitation activities produce different grenades that can be used against BTs. While that's certainly an original concept, it's completely redundant when you unlock hematic grenades which run on your blood. Kojima's attention to detail has always been one of his most admirable qualities, but a focus on the mundane and useless is just a waste of potential. If you had to go to the toilet every so often to keep your ammo count up with these grenades, that would make sense, but it's just a useless mechanic that once you use it once, you never have to bother doing it again once you get something to replace it. The biggest waste of potential, in my opinion, is the idea of void outs. Void outs happen when the player dies, and this triggers a huge explosion, leaving behind an enormous crater and devastating damage. This could have been the most interesting death mechanic to date, but it's never fully realized. I only died 3 times in my 80 hours of gameplay, and not once was a void out caused. Twice I died by falling down 2 different waterfalls due to my own stupidity and ill-placed ladders, but no void out occurred. The other time I died was against a story-based boss fight outside of a base, which just resulted in a regular game over and a reset. More consistent and focused use of this mechanic could have been really interesting and left everyone's game world looking totally different. As would be expected, Kojima's little trademarks and idiosyncrasies are all over Death Stranding. He experimented with using third-party music in MGS5, but he's gone all in here. Ever heard of the band Low Roar? Well, you will have heard most of their entire back catalogue after playing this game. Red Dead Redemption famously punctuates powerful extended gameplay segments with emotional music. Death Stranding found that particular nail and went at it with a pneumatic drill. All the music used is beautiful and captures the game's thick atmosphere perfectly, but becomes overused and begins to lose its impact the more the motifs are played. Many of these songs are quite long, meaning that you don't even hear the full track as you reach your destination or enter a combat encounter, abruptly ending the lovely Icelandic moody vocals that pleasantly massaged your ears. The original soundtrack by Ludwig Forsil, on the other hand, is really well used and lends an almost 80s sci-fi feel to everything. Death Stranding is perhaps the best example of a game that needs to be played to fully understand whether you like it or not. Even while playing it, you'll probably remain undecided. I definitely like it a a lot, and I almost love it, but for everything I love, there is something I hate. As every other reviewer has said, I'm glad it exists, but it certainly isn't for everyone. I'm glad that a creator as distinctive as Hideo Kojima has had the opportunity to create something totally original and exactly as he intended. Many people will hate this, many people will love it, but don't make up your mind until you play it yourself. I could write a sentence concluding how I feel about the game and then write totally the opposite, and both would still be true. Death Stranding is compelling, thoughtful, and meditative, giving you time to think about what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what it all means. Death Stranding is slow, plodding, and laborious, forcing you to take hours to do simple tasks and is a waste of your time as a player. Both of those sentences are true, but I would not call it boring. It's a game that I have every intention to play again one day, if I have another 80 hours to spare. Above all else, Death Stranding is a game, not a movie. It uses the unique medium of gaming to tell a story with a message that best translates through an interactive product. It certainly deserves the Game of the Year nomination, but I personally wouldn't vote it to win. Going back to Yoda, do or do not, there is no try, Death Stranding definitely falls on the do side, at least for me. Anyway, that's just what I think about Death Stranding. This isn't a fully extensive analysis of all my thoughts, and I plan to be going into more detail about it in this week's podcast, so make sure to tune into that. Leave a comment down below. Have you played the game? Do you like it? Are you not planning to play it? Because why would I want to be Amazon delivery driver? Make sure to let me know. Leave a like, hit subscribe, go on over to patreon.com/prettygoodgaming to help us make the content we create. I've been Henry. This has been my Death Stranding review. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Ban 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 Habiba biba biba